Why are centrists disliked by leftists? Simply put, centrists are right-aligned from where leftists stand. It depends on the context. There are many types of centrists. Some have a mix of views from both parties. Some are indifferent, ignorant. Some assume that the correct answer is somewhere always between the two parties. Meeting in the middle can be fine, but there are cases where it's not. For a dumb and extreme example, to make the point clear. Example, if someone wants to kill 2 babies, and someone doesn't want to kill any, obviously, meeting in the middle for one isn't inherently better. Centrism is fine if both parties are equally reasonable, or equally unreasonable. The problem is a lot of centrists assume this to be true. By assumption, it breaks down if that assumption isn't met. Some even take it to the extreme, and it basically becomes a belief system in its own right, where centrism becomes worthwhile purely for the sake of being in the center. People on the right, left generally view certain issues as terrible, similar to the baby example, so they don't think it's justified to sit on the sidelines. Your opinion will vary on whether that applies today and what issues. Since what is terrible can be pretty subjective, many who explicitly call themselves centrists wouldn't act, either out of ignorance, or refusing to evaluate the situation. When people say centrism is bad, that's usually what they mean. There is a difference between fence-sitter and having cross-competing interests. We don't really have a good word in English to distinguish the two. Centrism is very status quo. Progressives are, well, progressive. We want change, and some view people supporting the status quo as holding progress back. Centrism is also very relative to where you are. A centrist in my country would be pro-gay marriage, pro-choice, and all in for universal health care. Same reasons why people who lean far right hate centrists, because they disagree. I think you mean RENLIGHTENEDCENTRISM. There is a general argument by those that feel oppressed that inaction is support for the oppressor. Since the oppressor and the inactive both support the status quo, beyond that there exists the perception from those on either end of the political spectrum that a lot of the comparisons that those that identify as centrists, sometimes while actually being on one end of the spectrum or another, are rather ridiculous. This is as old as leftism itself. The left hates the centrists because the centrists support the status quo that the left wants to destroy. It's incrementalism versus destruction of the existing system. In almost every revolution of note there ended up being a dispute, if not bloodshed, between moderates, centrists, and the leftist revolutionaries shortly after the existing regime was overthrown. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, losing meaning after the shared enemy is overthrown. Mike Duncan did a great episode as an appendix to his Revolutions podcast on this subject. If you adopt the far-left ideology, then changes or you are pretty marginalized by society in some aspect and need it to change. For example, you may be low income and need programs like Medicaid and Medicare. Or, you can't back people who would work with right-wing extremists because you are LGBTQIA+. For people who need change, the centrists are the ones who shut down the people who need change. I consider myself center-left, and I think progressives don't like us because we want to take a slower approach to change. Personally, I like to anticipate the domino effect of every rule change and have a plan for everything. Meanwhile, I think progressives just want to change and deal with incoming effects as it comes. I'm sure it's more than that, but a difference in approach is a big thing. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse, and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Desmond Tutu. There's a meme that describes it well. One side says, we want to kill all black people, and the other side says, black people should have civil rights, and then there's a guy in the center saying, compromise? Quote, the idea is lefties don't want to compromise with the KKK. Killing all black people is not an idea we need to consider. Lefties see centrists as the people who want to hear out the KKK. Anyone who isn't already convinced that black people deserve civil rights is just evil. Leftists dislike Democrats, centrists, and Republicans because the most they will all do is maintain the status quo while gradually moving further right. Conservatives do the same thing with centrists. According to my dad, half the Republican Party are Rhinos. Republicans in name only. The left don't like centrists because they are perceived to slow down progress, while the right don't care as the effects of the centrist position are not very strong as far as the end goals of the right. Leftists want to go left, and the centrists want to stay center. There's natural friction there regardless of contexts. Leftists want to progress. Centrists want to keep the status quo. To a leftist, centrists trying to keep the status quo means keeping more right-wing policies in place, effectively making centrists as bad as right-wingers for enabling right-wing policies. People that self-ID as centrist always espouse conservative opinions. I don't think I've ever seen someone claim to be centrist and say something remotely leftist. I think centrists are mainly younger people who know conservatives aren't cool and haven't come to terms with the fact they're conservative themselves. Disco Elysium kinda helps sum up the reasons in a hilarious way. De pokes fun at all the sides. Right-wing people are fascists. Left-wing people are communist to the point of lunacy. And centrists are wastes of space. In a less fun lens. Centrists are polite but ineffectual. Yes, you understand both sides and want things to progress in a more gradual way. This would be a good quality. Were the stakes not so urgent? The left is also kind of at fault. It doesn't help that younger people are more left-leaning and the more vocal and combative ones have the charisma of a Vindaloo enema. I know very few actual centrists. Most I know share memes on social media about how both sides are bad. Then they make original posts that celebrate Trump, call for authoritarian banning of abortion, gay marriage, etc. It's the same with libertarians. Most libertarians I know consider themselves some kind of Ron Swanson. They in reality only care about liberty as pertains to marijuana usage but advocate for every form of governmental authority on policing women's rights, brutality against people of color, gay rights, trans rights, etc. You see someone make a decision that you view as evil, cruel, barbaric, etc. You call the person out and an argument starts. A third person comes out of nowhere and wants you to find a middle ground. You obviously don't want to compromise with something you consider evil, so by extension, this person pushing for middle ground is also evil. Take financial aid as an example. Maybe someone left-leaning might want better financial aid for homeless people. But someone right-leaning thinks homeless people should be left to struggle and shouldn't be a burden on the taxpayer. The left-leaning person probably views the right-leaning person as cruel and selfish. Expecting them to compromise with someone like that obviously isn't going to work and is just gonna get the same labels thrown at you. Centrists get a lot of hate for the same reason people like me who don't fall into any of the normal categories get hate. We get called filthy liberals by the right, and filthy conservatives by the left. It's not just the far left that hates those kind of people. It's the far right too. Because in today's political climate, if you don't 100% agree with the party line, you're an evil person. There is absolutely no room for a nuance when everyone is so convinced that they are right and everyone else is wrong. My very generalized view of most centrists is based on the belief that if you do nothing when people are being hurt, you are helping whoever is doing the hurting.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. TooAfraidToAsk is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.